Good evening, I'm Ces Oreña-Drilon.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
The big stories tonight. Sara Duterte says it does not matter if she stays on as vice president or not. The VP showed this seemingly calm bearing just hours before a local court junked her husband's petition to stop her impeachment.
Like the impeachment, this story is still unfolding. Congressman Martin Romualdez says Franco Mabanta is twisting the narrative of his arrest. The former House Speaker had earlier accused the social media operator of extortion.
And the political noise is not drowning out what could be the Marcos administration's worst economic crisis yet. The Philippine economy grew by just 2.8% in the first quarter, the slowest since the pandemic.
Ano ba talaga ang totoong kwento dito? Is this accountability or is this about removing a person who doesn't agree with the administration? Kung manatili ako vice president, well and good. Kung hindi man din ako maging vice president, okay lang din sa akin.
Vice President Sara Duterte says she will not hold on to power if moves to remove her from office come to pass.
But the VP is questioning the motive of lawmakers who want her impeached a second time. She smells politics behind it all.
Duterte is also addressing allegations about her temper that resulted in a laptop throwing incident. The big story tonight from News 5's Marian Enriquez.
Alam niyo naman na hindi ko gusto maging president. Kaya nga ako hindi tumakbo ng 2022. Lalo na vice president. Kaya nga ako tumakbong mayor noong 2022. So para sa akin, kung manatili akong vice president, well and good. Kung hindi man din ako maging vice president, okay lang din sa akin.
Just days before the House of Representatives vote on the articles of impeachment against her, Vice President Sara Duterte now says she is not bothered at all, even if she gets impeached a second time. Duterte, who is currently in The Hague to visit her ICC-detained father, said she is not one to hold on to any position. She even recalled a time when she stepped away from politics after serving as Davao mayor and continued helping people through legal work.
Hindi ako parang higil ba doon sa posisyon kasi kahit anong posisyon naman, kung gusto mo talaga tumulong sa tao, pwede naman yun.
On Monday, May 11, the lower chamber is expected to either dismiss Duterte's impeachment case or send it to the Senate for trial. The vice president maintained that the impeachment complaints against her lacked evidence and were largely based on unsupported allegations. She questioned the motive behind moves to oust her.
Ano ba talaga ang totoong kwento dito? Is this accountability or is this about removing a person who doesn't agree with the administration?
Sara also responded to claims that lawmakers were supporting her impeachment because they fear political retaliation if she remained influential.
Unang-una, hindi niyo naman, matagal na ako sa politika. Hindi ako kilalang tao na, or politiko na vindictive. Alam yan ng mga tiga Davao. Nagkaroon din ako ng mabigat na kalaban noon. Si Speaker Nograles, pero hindi ako kilala na isang vindictive na tao. Tapos pangalawa, pag ako congressman, hindi ako titingin sa kung vindictive ba o hindi yung isang tao. Titingin ako sa ebidensya. Yes. Meron bang ebidensya? Wala.
The VP likewise responded to reports that lawmakers are being threatened to vote for her impeachment or risk losing budget allocations for their respective districts.
Zero na talaga. Wala ng pera. Uy! Merong impeachment o wala ng pera na pwedeng ibigay. Pag binigay pa yan nila ang pang-MOOE sa mga congressman, hindi na mag-function ang gobyerno.
Duterte believes public funds would be better spent helping struggling Filipinos cope with the rising costs of living. The VP again criticized the government's handling of the oil crisis, now affecting the economy.
ang levels ng corruption is from the office of the president hanggang doon sa barangay. So, hindi lang siya ngayon. I think nag-worsen lang siya ngayon na zero na talaga ang foreign investor interest sa Pilipinas dahil sa mga corruption scandals.
And then there's the criticism about her temper. There are allegations online that the vice president threw a laptop at one of her staff members. Sara dismissed this as fabricated gossip. She claims such narratives were part of efforts to portray her as unstable, incompetent, or corrupt.
Hindi ako nagtatapon ng gamit sa ibang tao. Hindi ko tatapon yung laptop ko dahil personal ko yun. Pag nasira yun, ako din yung gagastos at basura siya na chismis. Unang-una, wala siyang benefit sa iyo. Siyempre, wala siyang benefit sa tatamaan ng laptop or cellphone. Pangalawa, hindi ako gumagamit ng laptop kasi hindi ako marunong gumamit ng computer. Sa lahat ng mga documents, nire-rely ko lang yan sa kasamahan sa books nila. Ano ba ang gusto nilang ipalabas na naratiba? Baliw ako? Ano pa ba? Bobo ako? Pro-China ako? Competent? Dati nagsasabi sila brat ako. Basura na siya, pero syempre dahil nakukonsume siya sa social media para paboran yung narrative na gusto ng kalaban.
For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
In related news, a Quezon City Regional Trial Court has rejected the petition of Vice President Sara Duterte's husband seeking to stop impeachment proceedings against her. In a 5-page order dated May 6, RTC Branch 81 presiding Judge Madonna Echeverri said the judiciary cannot interfere with the constitutional impeachment powers of the House of Representatives. In his petition, Attorney Mans Carpio also challenged the House Justice Committee's power to issue subpoenas, compelling the Bureau of Internal Revenue to produce his and his wife's tax documents. The request for financial documents of the couple was part of hearings that evaluated allegations of unexplained wealth against the VP. The court likewise said Carpio should have filed with the Supreme Court. In a statement, Justice Committee member Congressman Terry Ridon welcomed the decision. He stressed Carpio's petition has no basis and is only meant to derail his wife's impeachment case. For their part, Carpio's legal team clarified they did not want the House proceedings stopped. They only want the production of Carpio's tax returns halted.
Meantime, we will know in 4 days if Vice President Sara Duterte will be impeached a second time. Ahead of that vote, there is no doubt in the minds of House lawmakers that they have the numbers. Citing consultations with colleagues, Bicol Saro Party List Representative Terry Redon said there are at least 215 lawmakers who want Duterte ousted. That is way more than the required 106 votes or 1/3 of the lower chamber's membership.
Well, significant po yun kasi hindi na lang po ito simple majority, kundi papunta na sa super majority yung pong pagkakakuha po ng mga boto. Kasi I think yung pong 2/3 is around 212 House members. No? So if we are currently at around 215, na-breach na po ito.
Likewise, Tingog Party List Congressman Jude Isidre is also seeing more than 200 lawmakers in favor of Duterte's impeachment. In their party alone, Isidre says there are already 47 members voting yes.
The second, the AMLAC, and the third hearings, mas dumami yung, kumbaga kung meron pang nagdadalawang isip, by the second and third, medyo mas marami na. Dumami yung mas nakumbinse dahil sa ebidensya.
If the House votes against the Vice President on May 11, the articles of impeachment will be transmitted to the Senate. However, Senate President Pro Tempore Ping Lacson says convening as an impeachment court will not be immediate. While the upper chamber is duty-bound to take up Duterte's case, the trial could be hampered upon any objection. And since the Senate is a collegial body, the decision of the majority shall prevail.
Pwedeng hindi mag-convene kung mananalo yung ganong boto?
Yes, that's a possibility. Kasi nga, 24-member court ito, na kung ano yung sabihin ng majority, yun ang ruling ng court.
Hindi siya magiging unconstitutional, sir,
Well,
since...
kung hindi para convene yung impeachment court, we will rule as a Senate. So, Senate yung mag-rule as a body kung magko-convene ba kami o hindi. I'm sorry, it's not the impeachment court who will decide by a vote of majority.
And we're still talking about the Duterte impeachment with our first guest, House Deputy Speaker Ronnie Puno. Good evening.
Good evening, Ces. Good evening, Shawn.
Well, before anything else, are we talking to the future speaker?
Oh, no, of course not. No, that's not at all in the conversation or in the picture.
Why are these rumors continue to spread about you being the next speaker?
I have no clue, Ces, talaga. I mean, I just do my work as I'm supposed to. I try to run my party the way I should. And that's all I do. I have no interest in anything beyond that. I'm happy just serving the first district of Antipolo. I'm not looking for more work, so I don't really know where all of that is coming from, to be honest.
All right. Well, the NUP originally said that you are leaving it to the conscience of each member on how to vote on the impeachment of the vice president. However, it seems that there is a change of mind, and now you
No.
are for the impeachment. You're backing the impeachment.
No, actually, the agreement we made in our meeting last Monday is still the same, that all members should vote the way they want to. In fact, for the past couple of days, many of us have been going to our districts to discuss our votes with our constituents. I told them to make sure that we are not just casting our own personal opinions on this matter, but that we should also reflect the will and the opinions of our district. So that's what we've been doing the past couple of days. And we've scheduled to do this thing until Friday. And after that, we will meet again and probably come up with a final count of how the party will go.
What's the sentiment in your own district among your constituents?
In my district, it's there's a lot of young voters. And I would say that the bulk of them are in favor of impeachment. The older ones, are a little more cautious. But I think that there is a real majority of my constituents who are in favor of impeachment trial being started in the Senate.
You have 55 members in the NUP right now. I think 3 congressmen from Manila recently moved to the NUP. But I wanted to ask, Deputy Speaker, how many members from Mindanao do you have, and how are the constituents of those congressmen? Based on survey, Mindanao is still solid Duterte.
I think we have 21 members from Mindanao, Region 7 and Region 8. So you have to consider the other Cebuano-speaking areas. In our last straw vote, which was a secret vote, we came up with 14 no, 6 abstentions, and then the rest were yes.
That's out of 21, right?
No, out
Out of 55.
50 that attended actually. Or there were 6 that weren't there. So out of 49, 14 were no. 6 were abstaining, and then the balance 30 more or less were for yes. And then I'm looking at the list, and the other 6 that were not there, I would say at least half of them are probably going to vote yes. So we're thinking at this time maybe more than half of the party, maybe 60% will be voting for the elevation to the Senate of this case.
So even those from Mindanao and Visayan-speaking areas will probably vote for impeachment.
There are some, yes.
There's some.
And also
Based on
there
the
are,
straw vote that you...
well, it was a secret vote, so I don't know who were voting what. But I'm sure that there are even some people in Luzon who are also going to vote no, because there are other pressures on them as well. So, yeah, I was just trying to convince everybody that, these are times when we should rise up to, our responsibilities and our obligations to our constituents, and not let pressure be the primary concern when we make our vote on Monday.
What kind of pressure?
Well, you're familiar with the position. No, I mean, with the Iglesia ni Cristo, they have very openly stated that they don't want, ayaw nila ng gulo, so they do not want, they have not wanted this impeachment to move forward. And then in Mindanao naman, there's a really strong popular sentiment, I think, no, in many places against impeachment. They view it as how do you put it, maybe a regional issue. And so there is pressure on those that represent those districts to vote no, because that's what their followers are saying. Then, of course, there's talk that there's, about every Congress has this, as far as I can remember, if you don't go with the administration, your projects will be removed, you will have no funds for the next couple of years until election time, and so on. No? So, so there's pressure from all sides. I think there's not a single one among our members who is not getting pressure from both sides. So, and I think that's true for other parties as well.
So what VP Sara is saying has a ring of truth to it, that there's some arm twisting, you lose your funding for certain projects in certain districts, etc.
Well, again, I have no direct knowledge of that going on right now. But even as early as 2004, when I was first a congressman, that was always already the practice. That that's why there's a majority-minority. I mean, the minority generally does not get as much as the majority in terms of the projects that they can do for their districts. And I guess that's how it has proceeded ever since. So I don't know why now is going to be an exception. Although, to be honest, I personally have not seen any of that kind of discussion.
Congressman, I'm curious, how do your congressman members consult with their constituents to find out whether or not they are for or against impeachment? Because as far as I'm concerned, personally, nobody's ever asked me. My congressman, I don't know about Ces, but my congressman has not bothered to ask.
Neither have I.
Yeah, well,
how do you do it?
Do you have,
Like a caucus?
gatherings or
is it the barangay
paano
captains?
ginagawa yun?
Yeah, absolutely. Like every congressman has an organization within the district composed mainly of, the barangay captains, the SITSA chairman, the Sangguniang Kabataan leaders, and so on. And then there are regular meetings. I myself had a meeting yesterday with some of my leaders, and particularly I went to the Sangguniang Kabataan because that's where I heard that the opinions were a little more radical, and I learned that it was true. I mean, they were more adamant about this issue than the older leaders that I have been talking to. So most congressmen will be talking to their direct supporters. Like those. No, it's not we don't go and survey the district. We don't hold straw votes in schoolhouses. No, of course you talk to your leaders and assume that they're speaking, what their own followers are saying. So that's how we do it.
In your case, what convinced you, aside from the consultation, in the presentation at the Justice Committee, what struck you the most?
Well, to me, from the very beginning, I kept reminding myself that we are not supposed to judge this thing, but rather keep our decisions to what the Constitution asks us to do. which is to verify the form and substance of the complaints that have been submitted. Very early in the game, I already voted for the form and substance. So as far as I was concerned then, that would have been the point at which the case should have been sent to the Senate. But the Justice Committee as a whole decided to go into other clarificatory moves and get more information about the specific charges that had been filed. Not all of those information that came in, I believe, were helpful. But at the end of the day, it's the Senate that must decide. And I think the Congress has done its job, no, of coming in, clarifying all of the charges, finding more information about the specifics that have been brought to the committee, and sending all of this to the Senate so that the Senate can also, avoid having to do this all over again. And that's basically what I'm telling my party mates as well. A vote yes or no now does not mean do we think she's guilty or not. The issue is probable cause, and probable cause means it requires judgment from a competent party, and that is what we are deciding on. So I think a vote of yes means that we believe that it should go to the competent party, which is the Senate.
Okay.
To decide the impeachment court.
All right, but just earlier, our news item showed Senator Lacson saying, the majority may even kill it before they can vote to become an impeachment court. After all this trouble that you took, the Senate may just vote not to go ahead with the trial.
Well, if that is what the Senate rules provide, then I guess we just have to accept that. And if anybody wants to question that, they can again go to the Supreme Court and question the constitutionality of that rule, no? But I don't think it's unusual to expect that when it gets to the Senate, it goes first to some degree of evaluation before they convert themselves into an impeachment court. Again, as Senator Lacson said, let's remember, the Senate is not the impeachment court.
Yeah.
Because when you go to the impeachment court, the Chief Justice sits in and they all become just judges. No, the senators are a different kind of public official. And if their interpretation is that they should decide whether it goes into impeachment court, I think that might be a constitutional issue because I'm not, privy to any provision in the Constitution that says that after the Congress or the House sends it to the Senate, that it has to be again reevaluated to see whether it should be brought to an impeachment court. But then that's something for the Senate to decide. That is beyond our pay grade.
Okay, Deputy Speaker, I'm also curious, have you been in touch or are you in constant communication with the other major party leaders? Of course, Lakas is the biggest. There's also PFP. Whether or not the numbers are changing or have they been solid? Because we're hearing 200 to 215 yeses as of today. Do you see these numbers changing in any way before the Monday vote?
I have seen it slowly increasing, frankly. Yes, I do talk to some of the party leaders. I talk to Lakas. I talk to the party list group. That's not one party. It's like 63 individual party list groups. And then they've consolidated themselves into a one discussion group. But I don't think it's a solid group per se. I've talked with some members in the NPC. I think if you follow the ratio that NUP has, which is like 60%, then that's pretty much what everybody else, I think, is going to see. There are only 82 congressmen from Mindanao, Region 7 and 8. Those are the predominantly Cebuano-speaking regions that, of course, feel personally affected by any charges against anyone from their regions. So that's 82. But then, if you believe the report of Congressman Judy Asidre of the party list, Tingo, there's already 47 voting yes among the party list members. Plus, I guess, about 36 from NUP and Lakas. Lakas is is even higher in percentage. I'm hearing that there are over 50 that are going to vote for this. So just with this, you're beyond the 106 threshold already. Now, whether or not it gets to beyond 200, as some people are saying, I think remains to be seen. But that's not far-fetched. I mean, especially when it's clear that the decision is already to send it up, no? And again, since at least in our party, we're emphasizing we are not judging her. We are not saying she is guilty or not guilty. We are just saying that whatever we have heard, the complaints we have seen, the facts that we have gathered are enough to send it to the Senate for them to decide.
All right. Now, did the Speaker have a hand in this increasing, suddenly you now have you may have the numbers more than last year's numbers?
To be honest, I have not spoken with the Speaker about this at all. I don't think anybody in my party has spoken to the Speaker at all about this issue, or with the majority leader. I think the posture of the leadership now is just to let the House alone and leave them to decide this matter. I've not heard any statements from them one way or the other. So I don't think that, our party has been influenced one way or the other by the opinions of either of the leaders.
Well, finally, Congressman, kasi related to those coup rumors, I know you said hindi, but are there really some gripes with respect to the budget with the Speaker? You know, some congressmen not getting their allocations?
You know, as far as I know, no one has gotten their allocations in the first 5 months. I mean, there have been no public works projects bidded out. I understand that it is only now that they are about to issue the what we call the SARO, sub-allotment release order, which authorizes the offices to bid out the project. So we can say that, since then to now, like, there's really no public works projects that have been bidded out.
Okay.
And this is a result of many things, I guess availability of money in the government, or the continuing controversies that surround these things. But no one has gotten anything. The help that we give to our constituents has just started to begin. The medical assistance that we give, we are now being able to do that little by little. So it's hard to assume that it's a political thing, because we know that we are in.
All of you are on equal
in
footing. Nawala. Na zero.
Well, yeah, true. That's true. I mean, the majority, minority, even, I guess, even the leadership. Nobody has gotten it. And I don't think that's something that none of us have wanted. No, it's nothing any of us have wanted. But it's like, there's a war going on. You've seen the statistics. And that has to affect things like this. The first thing that will be affected by any kind of economic crisis like that are the projects that you have planned out and can be postponed for a later month, for example. But the good news is, I think that things are starting to settle down, and at least many districts are starting to be able to help our constituents.
All right. We thank you for talking to us. House Deputy Speaker and National Unity Party Chairperson Ronnie Puno. This is a big story on One News, and still ahead, the NBI is not done yet looking for persons of interest in the alleged extortion attempt on former House Speaker Martin Romualdez. The Bureau will summon another colleague, recently arrested social media personality Franco Mabanta. We have details after the break. Stay tuned. The big story is back, with Philippine economy skidding to its lowest in the post-pandemic era. Year-on-year, gross domestic product for the first quarter of 2026 clocked in at 2.8%. This is much slower than the 5.4% recorded in the same period last year. Analysts polled by Business World had a median forecast of 3.4%. The weaker than expected figures represent a new post-pandemic low. After COVID-19 sent the economy into a contraction for 5 quarters, GDP figures hovered above 4% from 2021 until the first half of 2025. But the economy slumped last quarter to 3%, dragged down by the flood control scandal. Dipping into the figures, household consumption, a pillar of the economy, grew by the slowest pace in nearly 16 years outside the pandemic. Investment fell 3.3% in the quarter, and industrial production ticked down 0.1%. Still, government spending rose 4.8% and consumer spending to 3%. DepDev Secretary Arsenio Balisacan Jr. said the outcome reflects both domestic and global challenges. Aside from corruption in infrastructure projects, factors at play include the delayed passage of the national budget and the Middle East conflict, which triggered higher oil prices and supply chain pressures. Now, in other news, social media personality Franco Mabanta and 4 others have been transferred to a detention facility in Muntinlupa following their arrest. That's after an entrapment operation
was conducted against them for allegedly blackmailing Leyte Congressman Martin Romualdez. And here is the story according to the NBI. Undercover agents pretended to be Romualdez's personnel and first met with Mabanta on Tuesday afternoon in a Makati hotel. The agents had with them a duffel bag with marked money amounting to 5 million pesos. Mabanta refused to receive the cash but gave another address in Pasig where it will be delivered. There, 4 of Mabanta's colleagues at the Peanut Gallery Media Network, or PGMN, supposedly waited with luggage in hand. Surveillance video showed the agents going to a room where Mabanta and company are waiting. Then came the arrest. Despite the videos, Mabanta's legal counsel believes it was all a setup and insisted on her client's innocence.
I know them naman personally, and I know they are very defensible, you know. So when I got the details of the case and when I saw, especially in the inquest, it was then that all the more we became confident of our defense and how weak the evidence presented. We are very confident of our case and we are working so hard to get our clients out as soon as possible.
In response, Romualdez rebuked Mabanta's defense of free speech and press freedom. The former speaker's camp accused the self-proclaimed political operator of twisting the narrative and said this is about whether hush money was requested. The congressman's statement went on: in a democracy, there is freedom to criticize, but it is a crime to extort. On our sister program Storycon, NBI Director Melvin Matibag also debunked Mabanta's story.
Nagsimula po yan, with mga total na surveillance po yan, and investigation and case build-up. 2 weeks po yan. Nakatagnap na po ng reklamo mula po kay Speaker na merong nag-extort, na merong nangingikil, na nananakot na pag hindi nagbigay ng malaking halaga, ay may ilalabas siya sa social media platform. Medyo mahirap pong paniwalaan ng setup kasi talagang yung term po ba sa law enforcement, nagpapagpag. Nung pong operation na yan, recorded po lahat. May mga body cams po, may mga video, at may mga media reporters po na kasama namin nung inoperate po yan.
Meanwhile, the NBI is also summoning PGMN anchor CJ Hiro after she was mentioned in Romualdez's complaint affidavit. She is considered a person of interest in the case. Mabanta and company could face a string of charges after allegedly demanding 350 million pesos from Romualdez. That's in exchange for withholding information linking the former speaker to a flood control project. Amid the Middle East crisis and other geopolitical challenges, Can ASEAN come up with regional solutions and face all problems together? Speaking exclusively with One News, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim thinks that the bloc can. Let's take a listen.
The ASEAN Leaders Summit returns to Cebu at a time of rising geopolitical tensions, supply chain shifts, and a push for deeper regional integration. So ASEAN finds itself at a delicate moment, aiming to uphold its much-vaunted centrality and neutrality amid sharpening U.S.-China rivalry and heightened geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. I sat down with Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim in an exclusive interview at the sidelines of the ASEAN Leaders Summit. Here's what he had to say.
Well, during these post-normal times, certainly is a period of uncertainty. We are just hoping for the settlement of the Hormuz issue and also the unnecessary escalation of the conflict in the Middle East, or we call it West Asia. And because that has exacerbated the crisis and the economic issues that we are facing. Malaysia is in that sense fortunate because we still consume 50% of our requirement, but still, there's still a requirement for import. And for that, all the issue of decarbonization, although it is part of a stated policy, not only for Malaysia but also for ASEAN and the region, but I think you have to be realistic to understand the immediate requirements, demands. So some adjustments has to be made.
What sort of adjustments? When you talk about what is realistic, realistically, everybody's got to think about their country first, but then move on to regional solutions. What will it take for ASEAN to move towards regional solutions and not just stop at nation-first policies?
You see, the unique experience in ASEAN is that because we have that sort of rapport, which is excellent. I mean, here with Bongbong Marcos and neighboring countries, we communicate and we do express issues in a very frank, candid manner, and we meet regularly. Because of the constraints now, we still communicate by phone. And therefore, to me, that is a requirement, which not many region or sub-region in the world can establish that sort of measure of trust, rapport, because that is essential. Because if you have that, then discussions can take place in a meaningful manner. For example, today during the ASEAN meet, the various ministers have already met, discussed extensively, following up the initial agreements. They all take note of the fact that energy is the paramount an issue, and focus on even alternatives. We were very firm in ASEAN on the issue of decarbonization, but we are also realistic enough to say that coal temporarily have got to be utilized. First, in terms of supply, and second, of course, contain extorting prices, exorbitant rate of increase, which is going to punish not only the economics but the people, the common men and women. And so I think the advantage in ASEAN is that we can still effectively communicate. We still will help one another. Although I said we can't export oil, but certainly the facility in Malaysia in terms of the processing has been adequately utilized, including by the Philippines, and we have facilitated that.
And that was Anwar Ibrahim, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, speaking to me in an exclusive interview here in Cebu at the sidelines of the ASEAN Leaders Summit. He now goes into the Leaders Summit, and it remains to be seen what happens to that communique and whether they will push through with a framework agreement on petroleum security in the Leaders communique. Kapatid, Cathy Yang, we are One News.
Now, some light news coming out of the ASEAN Summit. Filipino designer Francis Libiran offered a glimpse into outfits the first couple will wear during the gathering. President Bongbong Marcos's barongs feature simple designs crafted from piña fabric. Libiran also created 2 terno gowns for the First Lady, Lisa Araneta Marcos, made from yakan fabric from Basilan and 1 in Calyado fabric. The designs are elegant yet restrained. This is in keeping with the orders of the President to keep the ASEAN simple this year.
Meanwhile, we are pausing for another quick breather, but right after that, a private consortium is making one big push for clean energy in rural areas. Sustainability is up next. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the big story. Rural areas in Palawan, Quezon, and Cebu will soon have access to clean and reliable energy with the construction of 24 off-grid microgrids across these provinces. The Maharlika Consortium kicked off the 2.1 billion peso project in 3 barangays in the town of Rizal, Palawan. The consortium is composed of the Maharlika Clean Power Holdings, Clean Grid Partners, and We Energy. How do I say that? Is it We Energy Global? Each microgrid features advanced solar PV power, high-performance battery energy storage systems, hybrid generation, smart meters, and distribution grids. With over 50,000 residents living in 11,000 households set to benefit from the project, it's the largest private sector push for rural electrification. It's time to put sustainable initiatives on the spotlight, one story at a time. Welcome to Sustainability. Now we speak to one of the firms that is part of the consortium, and joining us is Quintin Pastrana, President at We Energy Power Pilipinas and Director for Business and Markets Development at We Energy Global. He's also President at Archipelago Renewables. Good evening, Quintin. Welcome to Sustainability.
Good evening, Ces and Shawn. Thanks for having me.
Well, congratulations on what you have been doing. We sorely need it in this archipelago of ours. So explain to us first how a microgrid works.
Okay. Thanks, Ces. I mean, I think when you look at a microgrid, it is an integration of the 3 different components of a power supply system, which is generation, transmission, and distribution. So what you have are remote off-grid areas that are unserved or underserved, meaning to say no electricity. You have to build the grid, you have to build the power source, and you have to get the electricity to the populace, including small businesses, utilities, rural health units.
The distribution na rin, the
yes.
retailer as
so
well.
All in one. So
all
it's a one-stop shop.
Mm.
And I think it's possible to do it now because of the innovation you have. You know, our engineering is advanced. It's already enabled to do small systems in multiple sites. That's able to now battery storage is now at the most capable.
Yes, that was the problem before, no?
Exactly. So lithium-ion
storage.
batteries are essentially commoditized now. You can actually store, as they say, pantawid between 6 p.m. and let's say early morning.
Pag wala ng araw.
Yes, and then after that we have basically conventional diesel generators that can help stretch it up until the sun rises again and charges the solar panels.
And all clean. No diesel. Goodbye diesel.
There is a small component of diesel, but these are
for
also
a backup.
But these are also biodiesel adaptive. So, they have, for example, like in Palawan, there is a biofuels component there that can be adapted down the road. You're looking at either palm, coconut, all these other biofuels. So it's also compatible with the environment and also the local economy.
I know you've been with renewable for the longest time, but you've partnered with people who have the capital, right?
Yes.
Is that how it happened? Tell us the story.
Absolutely. So We Energy is a European firm. mostly with that capital and based in Singapore. We have a joint venture partnership with Tokyo Electric Power, which is, let's say, the Meralco of Japan. And with that capital, plus local financing here from commercial banks, we're able to develop and deploy these projects across these sites. So around 24 sites,
wow.
a $35 million, which is the 2.1 billion concept, and you're looking at a split between 30% equity and 70% project finance. And that is a good model so that the investor gets return, the bank also produces a lower interest rate, and at the end of the day, you're able to supply clean, affordable, and reliable energy to
Mas mura
people.
kesa sa conventional.
Yeah, mas mura siya
coal
because- yes.
and all these other.
Yes, and you can hedge them against that because the renewable part, especially the solar, is basically at a fixed rate. You're not vulnerable, for example, to a Middle East war, and at the end of the day,
Right, and
there's-
the prices.
exactly, and to get
of
and
diesel.
just to get it there to the islands, like Palawan, for example. Look how many hoops and seas you have to get to, and now we have the on-site, and sustainable and self-sufficient.
I was just about to say I should not monopolize you because it's a reunion of sorts.
I'm always happy to be back. Thanks.
I last saw Quintin when he was my co-anchor, and then he left to pursue renewables.
Yes, I was like, I think almost 10 years ago.
Almost 10 years ago. So I'm glad to hear, but I'm also curious, Quintin, how much are we talking about per kilowatt hour?
Yes, I mean, so if you look at the retail rates that were approved by the Energy Regulatory Commission, they're now at around 12 pesos, fixed for the next 15 years, which is with our contract. And basically, you're looking at 12 pesos is effectively the rate we pay here. There's a subsidy, obviously, from rural electrification, which is part of the law. And then you're also looking at around 15 pesos for the commercial rate. So at least there's a ability to pay, and that's still within the market range and will encourage more investors and residents.
Tourism,
to-
for instance.
Absolutely.
No?
If you look at just the example of Sabang with the UNESCO Heritage Site, where our first microgrid was or is,
This was you on your own, Pamuna, or did you have partners?
we had partners. Basically, the Maharlika Consortium was there already. We
okay.
developed this already with We Energy, with Clean Grid Partners. Prior to that, with Vivant as well and GPI.
So your partners with Vivant
Yes,
as
that was the first partnership, and then we basically consolidated the ownership. And with that, you have a system that's so stable, and it effectively created a price incentive and a demand for tourists to come in more because there was an underground river there, UNESCO Heritage
close
Site.
to the
Yes, it's
underground
actually the back of that. And then what happened was you ended up having companies like Daluyan Hotel, which is a World Wildlife Fund warranted hotel, which is awarded. And then now you have the 4-point Sheraton there with a 270-room resort.
Wouldn't have happened if there was no energy.
I don't think there would have been an incentive to create something on their own and still make the economics work. And at the same time, the lack of clean energy would have actually deterred investors to come in. So now that you have this entire one-stop shop solution, which we're replicating across 24 sites, and that will also bring in more investors in other sites.
Plus, we're talking of areas na walang kuryente talaga
Yes,
to begin
yes.
with. Like
Yes.
Walang
zero.
incentive para tayuan ng extension ng grid. But Quintin, how much can one of your microgrids generate maximum?
Yes, actually, it depends on the size, right? For example, in Sabang, which is one of the larger microgrids, that's around, we have 1.4 megawatt solar, and then 2.6 megawatt hours of battery. So that is a large system, good enough for 600 households, and those 2 hotels, and the
600
RHU,
households.
and a small hospital is going to be built there. So there's enough that we plan so that in the next 15 to 20 years, we can address the demand there. Now, if you look at the 24 sites, they average around 1 megawatt each. But the most important part is the number of households we actually cater to.
So you have to, the economy, it has to make sense for you also. That there are enough
You're right.
consumers.
There's an economies of scale in
Yeah.
the number of households. We also look at the factor conditions of the area. Like for example, the first 16 microgrids we have in Palawan, you have some in the
So
northern
yung
side.
focus on Palawan talaga, 16
Well, that's
there.
where a lot of the underserved communities are, but also a brilliant combination between agribusiness potential in the south, like in Rizal, Quezon, and Bataraza. And then in north, we have these more tourism-orientated sites like El Nido in San Vicente, and then up north in the Calamian Islands like Busuanga, Coron, where we have new microgrids as well. So it's a nice balanced
you have
portfolio.
already in Coron and...
Well, we're going to start there. We won the award thanks to the new law. And to Shawn's point, there's a good incentive now because the Microgrid Service Provider Act, which has been passed in 2022, and an IRR, I think, in 2023, basically incentivizes investors to come in. There's
attractive
terms.
incentives.
Contract sanctity, the DOE bids out the projects in a very transparent manner. So you're seeing more and more players.
Holidays.
Yes, absolutely. The BOI comes in as well. And there's enough incentive for more private sector partners, which we see coming in the sector.
Pero kayong nauna.
Kaming nauna, we took a risk because I think that's where we felt we could have a leadership in this niche, but also very shared value type arrangement.
So these are all solar powered with a backup of diesel, you said, no? Are there other sources of energy that you're looking at?
Yes. I mean, as innovation grows along and depending on where the area, you could have tidal, you could have wind. Currently, in the Palawan area or the Northern Cebu area or the Polillo Island group in Quezon, those are primarily solar with a lithium-ion battery to basically absorb most of it. And then after that, yung konting pantawid lang, which is the diesel generator. So in total, we have at 6.6 megawatts of solar, 3.5 megawatts of diesel, which is the small part, and the battery 7.6. And the 7.6
Is the usual size 6 megawatt?
Well, that's the entire portfolio. It looks small, but it's divided among 24 barangays. And what's nice about it is it shows that small is beautiful. You can make it work at a smaller level and then replicate it across the country.
Will the cost come down eventually? Could this be the solution? Because we have the highest power rates in Asia, right? And the reason that's always given is because we're an archipelago. The transmission, etc. You need big capitalization. So if we build mini grids around,
then you don't need to connect to the national grid.
You don't need to connect. It's a smarter solution.
Yun yung mahal, di ba?
It's an absolutely smarter solution because climate resilient, they're remote, they're self-sufficient, and they require less fossil fuel. So if you look at just the rate of decrease in terms of the cost of solar itself, that's also driving the cost going down. And then also battery costs are going down. So when you look at the total of the potential, it's just fascinating when you look at the kind of impact you have.
Pero hindi na microgrid ang tawag doon.
Well, microgrids can be in the realm of, let's say, 100 households to 300 households. And what's helpful also under the law is there's also the National Power Corporation that takes areas that the private sector doesn't seem as viable. So these are the strategic power utility. The SPUG, missionary electrification.
Which are all on diesel, ano?
Yeah.
And they are on diesel, but to NPC's credit, they're looking at, I understand, a hybridization program to build more solar into it.
Are you interested in looking into that?
Yeah, we're looking at it for as long as the terms are good. I think all the investors are just looking at how does our investment have recourse, and we'll be happy to do it because there's still 2 million households that still don't have electricity.
How long before? Yeah, but if you make an investment, how long does it take to recoup that investment?
Yeah, I think it varies depending on the size and the growth of the area. But in our experience, we think as an investor, you look at a 15-year contract. I think in the third of that time, assuming there's no lockdowns or any other force majeure, you'll be able to recoup your investment in the single-digit set of years. And then at the end of the day, everything else becomes the upside.
Well, the sun will continue to shine naman, di ba?
Even if it changes a lot, you're hedged because it averages out very well over time. So the longer runway you have, which is I think the improvement under this Microgrid Service Provider Act, you actually have at least 15 years. And that's a long enough runway for an investor to recoup the investment.
Like for instance, is it Visayas that imports from Mindanao its power needs? Something?
Yeah, my understanding is it's a little more complicated because there is a transmission grid already between Mindanao and the Visayas. And then the geothermals pretty much produce a lot that Cebu consumes. Cebu produces enough that Negros and others. So in a way, it's a bit of a mix now. It used to be Mindanao also supplying.
Pero we lack energy security kasi.
Yes,
diba?
and in the remote areas, in those 2 million areas where it's the last mile delivery, that's where the development happens. That's also where the most vulnerable communities are, and they're the ones that need the SDGs. And we're happy to show Ces and Shawn that the crime rate in one of our areas has gone down 80%, the mortality rate down 70%.
And the impact on, I guess, the youth.
Yes.
They can do their homework.
Exactly. So we measured that over time. So we had an intern from Stanford look at the metrics, and we saw that even the education rate after 5 years, which takes a little longer, it went from like 84% to 92%. So that's a good jump, even with the lag effect. And then the livelihood went up by 70%. Double the amount of registrations, and most of them run by women, which is, it ticks off all the boxes of the SDGs. Exactly.
Yeah. This is great work you're doing. Huh?
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations. I was just listening to this
I'm not
interview.
upset anymore.
We're leaving you.
We're getting over it.
Ted Turner said this, and this was like an interview he did with Christian Amanpour.
Yeah, God rest his soul.
I think 2018 or something, and he said that the youth should go into clean energy. Bata ka pa naman siguro.
Kahit paano.
Pwede pa.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think when you look at this technology, some of it is now off the shelf. It's commoditized to the point that you can have your own solution. People are putting rooftops on their, people are putting solar on their rooftops. So those things you're becoming a prosumer rather than a consumer. You can see that at the household level. But when these new technologies come, like tidal, mini wind turbines, we have a mini wind turbine setup in Singapore. That's going to be really interesting to deploy with these younger entrepreneurs.
And I guess the prices will come down also, like solar. Kasi mahal daw yung wave energy.
Yeah, there's a Moore's law effect, I think, with chips. It happens. It just depends on the rate of innovation. And of course, if there's no disruption in supply chain, the rate of decrease in prices is steady. So the batteries are getting cheaper. Hopefully, we won't have as much displacement in the Middle East or in Ukraine, so that these minerals and others can go, right?
So they're in China, di ba?
Yeah, they're in China as well. So that's why you have the straits are important for freedom of navigation. So the important thing is supply chain makes it happen, and at the end of the day, innovation, especially with younger scientists and STEM orientated folks, are going to be driving that innovation better.
We hope it will come from the Philippines this time. Is there?
I think so. I mean, our state universities, the DOST, they have these funds and they have these grants. I think you look at the European Union. That happy development capital is still moving, and what you're really fueling is the innovation and ingenuity of entrepreneurs. And the idea is they just need a space and the materials to be able to do that, and test what they call an MVP, like the minimum viable product, and then be able to scale it. We've had Filipino investors already doing things on the wall for solar, but those things will be scalable in good time. In the meantime, we have to energize the 2 million households, and everybody else, I hope, will join. Yeah,
it's a good thing time flies.
Yeah. Well, this is where more power to you
actually means
kind of works.
Very literally.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Quintin Pastrana, President at We Energy Power Pilipinas.
Thanks for having me.
All right, on that note, that's it for the Big Story on this Thursday. Thank you so much for watching.
We're back here tomorrow at 8 p.m. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time. Good night.